Hello. You all right, Nikki?
Hiya. Yeah.
Well, welcome everyone to another episode of PTTP Paranormal UnCut. Today we've got a great guest joining us, but I'm not on my own today, which is great. We've got the lovely Nikki joining and taking part. She's going to be leading the talk today.
No. We've had this argument. No.
Okay, we're going to be doing it together. But no, we've got another fabulous guest joining us. We are going to be joined by Dr. Kate Cherrell. I've been spending a few days trying to get the right way to say Kate's name properly, and I think I've got it right, so which is great. We had the pleasure of meeting Kate at the Festival of the Unexplained, listening to her talk, you know, the stuff that she's, you know, looked into, her sort of area of expertise. So it's great that we're going to be able to get Kate to share that a little bit more with you guys. As always, if you've got any questions that you'd like to ask Kate, stick them in the comments, say hello, let us know who's there. We'll do the hellos in a moment. But what I want to do is just bring Kate on and we can have a great chat with her, can't we? Good evening.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you today?
I'm wonderful.
Good. Again, thank you very much for joining us this evening, taking part of your day out. I know you've been busy, as we were just discussing in the background, with stuff going on your end, but thank you. What I want to do is just say a few hellos to people in the chat. So we've got the lovely Lynn Peters in the chat. Hope you're doing well. Hope Bob's doing well as well. We've got Sarah. We've got Dan. Thank you for my Christmas jumper. Yeah, I got told by my son it's an old man's jumper. I thought it was quite cool, but apparently not.
Well, it's fine. Stylish.
That's cool. Yeah.
But yeah, so hey Samantha, hope you're doing well. So again, Abby, thank you for joining. As always, it's always great to see you guys in the chat. So what I'll do is I'll kick this off, Kate. You know, your sort of expertise, you know, you've gone old school, if we say, like as we were saying in the background, a lot of the times when we talk to guests, it's all about the modern stuff, but you're going back in history, like Victorian stages and things like that. Before we find out what you've looked into, how did you get involved in that sort of era of your paranormal journey?
Right. Well, I suppose I sort of came in from two different angles. So I've always been interested in the paranormal, in ghost stories. I was very big into like alien encounters and stuff growing up because I was at prime time. This is like X-Files era. I think everyone across the Western world was pretty into that sort of thing. But alongside that, I've always been a bookworm, and so I developed a real passionate obsession with 19th century literature. And the era of Dracula and High Gothic and that sort of thing. And then when you look outside of that and you look at the cultural landscape and the social landscape that was producing these kind of novels, the kind of the formative era of the ghost story, of the big Gothic novella, then it all just sort of coalesces into kind of a perfect storm. So I think when you look at the 19th century, you get the birth of ghost hunting, paranormal investigate. You get the birth of Victorian Gothic. You get these amazing movements that we still have really big obsessions with today. So it kind of stood to reason that it would really fan the flames of my paranormal interest. And I suppose once you really get into something, I've always been the sort of person who will completely obsess and make myself even more of a social pariah than I already am. Yeah. So I have to know everything. So that's why I live around books. I'm an incredibly dull person outside of my own very niche interests. But yeah, so it came from that. And so looking into spiritualism, birth of modern spiritualism, spirit contact, it naturally all grew in together in like a beautiful spooky Venn diagram.
Brilliant. Nikki, do you want to ask the next question? Or
so obviously I know that from looking back on the history of everything, and I've listened to some of your podcasts you've done with people, I think your granddad was quite a main influence for you when you were little, getting into having an interest in the paranormal, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was incredibly influential because now my career is solidly based around the paranormal. I'm a full-time writer, researcher and broadcaster now, which is quite mad. But he died long before any of this, so he never got to see it, which is quite odd. But he was really into, yeah, I think he'd, well, I know he'd be very proud. He would find it hilarious that this is what happened. But yeah, when I was growing up, I spent a lot of time with both sets of grandparents, and my granddad on my dad's side was really into aliens, UFOs, all that sort of thing, and would have these little 60s and 70s paperbacks and this big chunky paranormal encyclopedia. And instead of having children's books in the house, he'd sit me on his knee and we'd look through the encyclopedia. And I'd say, well, what's that? Oh, that's automatic writing. What's that? Oh, that's voodoo. That's that. And it had these glossy pictures in the middle with some of the most like iconic paranormal images and unexplained images, like the Nazca lines and like the Brown Lady of Raynham Hall and all these sort of really iconic. And they stuck with me. And Flatwoods Monster, cryptids, all manner of things. And so yeah, he's got a lot. Well, he's to blame, really, for me not getting a normal job all these years later.
No, thank God for that, because yeah. I mean, see, Nanda and I have seen you at Festival of the Unexplained last September, and I have to say, I think they're out of so many people you can listen to. I think there's mainly two people that I'd quite happily sit in a room all day and listen to, and that is yourself and Penny Griffith Morgan. The pair of you
lovely.
are
I love Penny.
You keep people's attention. Do you know what I mean? You're not boring, you're not stagnant, and you can hold somebody's interest in something. And yeah, we thoroughly enjoyed your talk.
I think, as Nikki was saying, is you're coming in from a different angle to, like Penny as well. She makes history fun. Yourself, you come in with something that you don't expect to hear about. A lot of the the kind of things. And going into the paranormal history, you know, one thing that I know, you're a specialist in spiritualism, and things like that. But I wanted to ask about the seances, because doing a seance has evolved over the years. But going back to like the sort of the Victorian times, how would they have done a seance? Is it a lot different to the way we do it now, or the way we perceive a seance?
That it's a can of worms. That is. I wish there was a really snappy answer. Like, hey, they do table tipping, they do this. That's it. That's your Victorian seance. But if I may just stand on my soapbox for the next hour and a half, I would like to tell you about all the gripes I have with Victorian seances. Right. I love the Victorian era, and I think a lot of people think that my obsession with spiritualism and certainly seances within the late 19th century is this very gothic, very studious thing. It's, you know, oh, they did this particular thing, and this was when the Ouija board was patented in the US, and so on and so forth. It's because they are ridiculous. If you look through spiritualist periodicals of the late 19th century, it's like EastEnders. They're slagging each other off, they're trying to attack each other, they're shoving each other through trapdoors, they're chucking live fish onto seance tables, chucking up newspaper. And then people today have the front to say they're doing a traditional Victorian seance. It's like, I want you to vomit out a live kitten onto a seance table and have a chat with a horde of ancient ghosts. Then you can call it a traditional Victorian seance. Because I like the idea of when people do traditional Victorian seances today, they're going back to an imagined past. So it's very, well, tech-free, completely tech-free, because the Victorians didn't like technology. Nonsense. Like, from the dawn of modern spiritualism and paranormal investigation and fraudulent mediums, certainly, people were using equipment. Yes, it might not have LEDs on it, but it was clockwork, it was triggered, it was weighted. There has always been equipment. But the idea that there's this sacred base that we can all go back to, and it's purely table tipping, rapping, table turning, it's all table based, because obviously it started on tables and floorboards. And in Victorian society, a lot of people would have a séance, so you carried on using the table afterwards because you just had your tea and cakes on it. So it was an action of it was just useful. It was handy. You didn't have to move far for it. But this idea that things like calling out, rapping, and Ouija in its many forms, or spirit boards, and automatic writing, pendulums, they're all great. They're all really great. And they have all been used in 19th century seances. That's not to dismiss these things individually and say that they weren't used by the Victorians. But I think everything has to be taken with a pinch of salt. Like, yes, they were using alphabet cards. Yes, there was automatic writing. Yes, there were pendulums. There was this, there was that. But there was this and. Like, the most impressive seances that everyone wants to recreate were inherently fraudulent and used tech, even table rapping, because modern spiritualism came kind of around the age of the stage magician, like the really worldwide famous stage magician, like Darren Brown, eat your heart out. He's a big specialist in this. He really knows what he's talking about. But a lot of magicians who were selling their devices and their tricks to fellow magicians in the 19th century and into the 20th century found that it was a very, very lucrative side hustle to then market their tricks and their devices to spiritualists, to fake mediums, to, you know, so on and so forth, fake mesmerists, you know, you name it. So there's this massive crossover between stage performance and stage magic and legitimate spiritualist mediumship, spiritualist seances, and so on. So there's always going to be this thread tracking alongside traditional seance. That is, it's fun, it's fraudulent, but there is no sacred one base level Victorian seance that we can all go back to and get the best evidence, the best spirit contact. It has never existed. It hasn't. But I like the idea of it, and I would support any events company team that wanted to do an old timey séance, but I have big question marks to throw out at people saying that we're doing a traditional séance. We're doing a traditional investigation, a traditional séance. It's like, well, what's tradition? Existed. No fun at all. Ruin everything.
There's no bellows to blow out the candles, and you know,
no trapdoors to drop your ghosts through.
Exactly.
Yeah. I know.
Spoil
People
it.
need to really commit and modify their homes for a traditional Victorian séance.
Oh God, yeah. Then that's the next haunted house idea.
Exactly. Yeah, just don't get planning permission. Just take a saw to your ceilings and hope for the best.
Go full Sweeney Todd.
Oh yeah.
Would have religion played a part with that back then? Like, how was religion? You know, because nowadays you get a lot of people that are very religious that don't believe in what we do in the paranormal field. A lot of people say it's stuff that we shouldn't delve into. We should leave that sort of thing alone. But back then, would they have used religion as part of their way to delve into the paranormal? Do you know much about the religious side of things?
Yeah, many did. Well, I think, first of all, you've got to take into account that modern spiritualism, which is really what influences contemporary paranormal investigation, Sisters, 1848, things like that. It's around that time that there were several new religions and new sects popping up. So you've got a lot of Calvinism, you've got the birth of Mormonism, you've got all these different, it's a real mixing pot of religious ideas, certainly in Europe and North America around this time. But I suppose now, when we think of religious views that have been quite openly against or condemn mediumship, paranormal investigation, and so forth, you've kind of got Anglican and Catholic, Christian denominations. Certainly, all the religions have different ways in which they interact with spirits traditionally and in worship. But so in the 19th century, Catholics generally, certainly in the UK, were very much anti-modern spiritualism, anti-spirit contact from the off. However, there were enormous swathes of people that managed to really comfortably marry their Christian beliefs with their new developing spiritualist beliefs. And that's largely through different viewings and different interpretations of the Bible. So if you see spirit contact as being an act conducted between a medium and a spirit, if you go back to the Bible, many people interpreted the first medium as being Christ himself, because he spoke to spirits. He was the divine link between God and man. And several other biblical figures like Saul were basically soothsayers, and they would communicate with spirits. The Old Testament's a little murky, but certainly within the New Testament, it was quite easy to make arguments to say this is a Christian act, this is an act of worship, this is a blessing that's bestowed upon the 19th century and bestowed upon these communities. And so a lot of people were saying that and wrote vast amounts of literature on séance, spirit contact, mediumship being a very godly activity, and that Christ himself had come down and had a natter and said it's all right. And many people even claim to have Christ as a spirit guide. I mean, those people were still hotly debated at the time, because that's a hell of a claim, isn't it? But yeah, there was a uncomfortable relationship continually, though, between communities and between mediumship. I mean, right through to the 1940s, Helen Duncan, the last woman to be arrested under the Witchcraft Act, when she was working up in Scotland in her early days in Callander and then through to Edinburgh, she was approached with a lot of trepidation and a lot of fear. That's why she got the nickname Hellish Nell, because it was thought that she was dabbling in something that the church couldn't possibly agree with. So there's always been a very uncomfortable relationship, but it's never been as simple as us and them. There's always been that integration. And today you get Christian spiritualists. There's Christian spiritualist journals that are fantastic. So it's everything's murky. There's never it's never black and white. No.
Wow. Nikki?
Do you know what? I'm just so absorbed in what you were saying.
Sorry. I can never give a
while Nikki's taking it all in, I've always got a question after question. We know that primarily you're doing a lot of the history stuff and things like that. But personally, for yourself, have you, growing up or, since delving into the paranormal, has there been anything that you specifically experienced that is paranormal to you? And if so, what kind of things have you experienced yourself?
Yeah, well, I'd say even prior to beginning, like, actively investigating and joining paranormal communities, prior to that, for a few years, a family member of mine owned what I can broadly just call a haunted house that I'd now regard to be it was a house with a poltergeist attached, and I lived there on and off with them for about 3 years, and that was quite extreme. And it's weird because up until maybe like a year or two ago, I always held those experiences as completely separate from my paranormal work. It was like that was the weird house. That was the thing that we had to leave. And this is the fun ghost stuff I do, but we don't talk about that because that was genuinely scary. So there's this weird duality to it. But certainly those years were extreme, and it was full, like anything you could possibly wish to see on an investigation. It happened in that house, and then some. It was really full on. It was really horrific, and
Wow.
It was like full footsteps going round in loops every night, going everywhere, like big slashes of light moving around. We saw figures walking around the house. We kept seeing the same man in the house, and things were thrown. My sister was pushed down the stairs, and ultimately I moved out, and they sold the house as fast as they could. So it wasn't a kind of, let's study, that's interesting, like when you see these accounts of, and they lived there for 25 years. Oh, no, we left as soon as we could, but it was so extreme that you just couldn't sleep upstairs anymore. So I had to go, and my sister moved the mattress downstairs into the living room and slept there while they tried to sell it. So that's the most extreme. But then since then, it's like, I've had great spirit board sessions, and I've seen, little shadow movements and things, and that just seems like that's fun. That's paranormal investigation. That's what I do when I go out in 16 layers with a load of kit and a torch. Whereas what I experienced before is like, no, that's the bad stuff. I want nice little messages in a castle with my friends.
I get what you say, but since moving away from that property, and have you ever delved back into the history of that property to try and identify who that person may have been, or what? Did you find any history out about the house?
Yeah, I only started looking back at it. It was last year. Last year was the first time I thought, you know what, I'll make this into. So we'll sort of make it into a talk, but I was thinking that before my sister and I forgot everything, I should record this. So I sat her down and we recorded hours and hours and hours of tapes, just trying to get everything written down. And so since then, I've been trying to get a coherent timeline together, and I've looked into like land registries, electoral rolls, things like that. We think we know who it is because at the time we did ask the neighbours what had happened very casually, so you don't sound like nutters, as I'm sure is something we all have to navigate all the time. But we think it was a man there who was in his mid-40s and he died in the bath in the 80s.
Oh wow!
And I think it was him because we kept seeing him. Feasibly think it could have been because before my family bought the house, it was rented and tenants would last a maximum of 6 months. The turnover was so fast. But the person who stayed there the longest before was a man who lived with his mother, and then he died in the bath, and we think he's still there. Well, we just called him the man, but we saw the same thing everywhere, and he would appear in the bathroom quite a lot. Yeah.
So looking back on it now, do you think some of it might have been poltergeist? But you think like the walking around, the repetition of stuff, do you think that might have been residual and just kind of like a loop playing over of what his routine might have been? Or
it feels like it was at the beginning when we kind of wrote everything down at the beginning, it ticks all the boxes of some sort of residual loop. because it started going up and down the stairs for a few months, and it would be like really heavy footsteps, you know, like someone in work boots, like thump, 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 up and down the stairs. Yeah, all night. And then it started going in a loop round the landing, and it would do this loop every night. It wasn't like once a month we'd think, oh, that's something strange. It was every night. And the dog would sit at the top of the stairs and watch something that we couldn't see. And that was probably the scariest bit, though, that you can explain a lot away, but when something else is confirming what you're seeing, that wasn't fun. Yeah. But I suppose after that, when it started to move, it started to change and go into different rooms. And then when we started seeing things were moving, it would react differently if different people were in the house. Then it seemed like, oh no, this is intelligent. But it was almost like the residual, like the loop was sort of like a start. It was like gaining pace. You know, like when you wind up a clockwork toy and you have to do that initial winding and then it goes. It felt like that. Yeah. And then it never calmed down again. It just stayed extreme, and that's when we left.
So do you ever think that the people that moved in after your sister sold the house might have experienced it? Have you ever been tempted to kind of go up there, knock on the door and go,
I have.
hello?
So I've been so close several times and then thought, come on now. It's not, don't be that person. Because also if they hadn't, or if, you know, you don't want to suddenly put it in their head. But no. if they had, then they'd be trying to chase my sister down and say, why did you sell us this? It was quite a long time ago. But as far as I know, the people that bought that house are still there now. But the woman that bought it afterwards was very spiritual, and she brought in with her a lot of crystals and different healing things. So we were thinking that maybe she could tap into something that we weren't equipped for at the time, because this was early 2000s.
Yeah, so, just other communicated with it.
Yeah, or maybe it just didn't. Yeah, or maybe it just didn't like us, and it saw her and was like, "Oh, this is fine."
No, I think it sounds more like it was because you'd been there for so long. The longer you were there, the more comfortable it was getting with you being there. So it was just.
It started really kicking off. It only really started properly being quite frightening when we were redecorating. And up until recently, because I'm a nosy sod, I have to drive past the house whenever I go to the hospital. And they've had the same wallpaper this whole time until the last time I drove on the way to the hospital, and they changed their living room. And I was sort of thinking, what's going to happen?
You wanted something.
I'd struggle. Yeah, I'd struggle to go back in that house. I really would. Like most places, when they're like, oh, it's terribly haunted by XYZ, I'd be like, oh, brilliant, let's go in, let's do this. Yeah. But that one, I might have to have a couple of bevies before I went in, just to calm my nerves. Yeah, it's a bit full on.
And we're saying that, you know, we're talking about a spirit that's potentially, you know, still in that house. It's never left. You know, over the years, have you developed your own theories to why spirits still roam the earth after they've passed on? You know, because a lot of people say that, is there a choice that we get to choose to stay, or we go to another, you know, like a universal, you know, what's your theory why spirits are still here? Do you think they're stuck here, or?
I do think that some are stuck, but I think in terms of like consciousness, I do believe that the consciousness continues after death. And I think that's just something that's like my base level. But I do think that there's something. Some spirits are they're sort of trapped in their own mind. I feel like then they can't acknowledge to themselves that it's done, it's over, and then the longer that goes on, the more sort of confused they are, almost like post-death dementia. You know, it's probably a mad theory, but I do feel like there's some spirits that just are kept here by anger, by confusion, emotions. I do think that like extreme experiences and extreme emotions can leave an imprint on a place, which is far more like the whole ye good old stone tape theory. But yeah, no, I do believe that there's different planes of consciousness and different planes of existence in a sense, but all linked into that consciousness. Yeah.
Brilliant. Nikki, you got a question?
So I know you're a great lover of graveyards. What's your favourite graveyard?
That's like asking someone their favourite child. which would be an issue if I had any children.
It's the ultimate question.
Yeah, Dave, the other one's rubbish. Yeah. It changes. I mean, the sentimental thing is always, it's the graveyard. I went around every week, twice a week with my granddad, the same granddad that had all the ghosty books. So again, it's got a lot to answer for.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I'm working on. Well, I've signed a contract now, so I can say I've got a book coming out, a second book coming out later. I think it's meant to be later next year. About graves and graves that I've come across on my years of graveyard bothering. So recently, I've been going all over the country trying to find really odd graves and find the stories behind them and just try and document them, because vandalism is a really big issue still with graves. I mean, only recently, the Ebenezer Scrooge grave, he wasn't buried there, but it was like a infamous grave that had been that had a different name put on it for I think it was BBC production in the 60s, maybe. That had been smashed up by idiots with sledgehammers. So it's a matter of documenting. It's horrible. It's mindless. So I think I don't necessarily have a favourite cemetery at the minute, she says. I don't think I do. That's tricky. All right, the last cemetery I visited was the main Victorian cemetery in Blackpool.
Okay.
And it is absolutely stunning. It's really stunning. It's like a lot of the places I really like are very low on people's to visit list, but I absolutely love Blackpool. And they've got some amazing burial spaces, and a lot of because it was such a boom town, 19th century, they have some amazing monuments there and memorials, and they've got that's probably the best way to say it is, I don't know if anyone's like a big Nightwish fan, but the cover of the Nightwish album Once it's a very, very famous grave of like a weeping angel draped over a big tomb.
Yeah.
And there's the original one, and then there's one I think in America, and then there's one in Italy. And Blackpool has two, and it's the most beautiful grave. They've got a very large one, and then there's like a miniature version, like a few plots behind. It's phenomenal. They're really beautiful grave markers, and I feel like places like that are so overlooked as spaces that are worthy of like historical merit, of social merit. And so I think just nipping into there, and there's countless others, like gorgeous graves. It's proof that every cemetery and every graveyard has something fascinating in it. But you find the weirdest things in churchyards. Like, just pootle on up to Preston and visit some of the little villages on the way, and they'll be like, oh, this is a stone where there's a witch buried under it in case she claws a way out from the netherworld. And you think, oh, of course there is. Oh, thank God. Oh, Ian. It's like what people take for granted is genuinely fascinating. Yeah.
It is amazing. Must admit, I'm a lover of graveyards as well. I find them the most relaxing places going.
Yeah.
They're so, I don't know. I can just walk through a graveyard and it's so calming.
It is. They're peaceful. They're beautiful. It's like walking through an art gallery and also a museum of social history, and it's quiet, and you get points in at the same time. So it's like you can't lose unless it's one of those massive cemeteries where there's loads of drug dealing happening, and you have to be very careful where you walk. But the rest of the time, it's lovely, isn't it?
Yeah. Like you say, finding the headstones and then the grave markers that are just unique out of all of them, and you kind of just sit there and just going, that's beautiful. That's just absolutely stunning. You should just stand there and look at it for ages, couldn't you?
And it is amazing. If anyone knows me, I'm the scaredy cat of the group. I take things very like, if something happens, I'll be the one to jump. But Sarah said one day, shall we go out? Just me and her, spend a few hours together. And we went to a cemetery in Southampton where the common is. And she was like, these are really old graves. And I mean, they're so old. But there was one grave in particular that I'll never forget. We were able to make out the right. And it was from someone from the Titanic, from the sinking of the Titanic. And I just thought, that's amazing to be stood at a grave from going that far back. and it does make you
Yeah.
think about the history and, you know, and what they must have gone through and things like that. You know, when you're going through, you know, you're doing your walks through the graves and everything like that, do you feel energies around you at all, or do you pick up, like, when you go to a certain grave, do you think something's drawing you to that grave at all, or is it just you're just walking around looking?
You know, very rarely. Like I worked in a cemetery as well years ago.
Oh wow!
And was there all hours of the day and night. So that's one of those things. You know, when you go on social media and you see those memes that are like, you know, would you stay overnight in a cemetery for £1 million? It's like, I did it for minimum wage. Yes, I'd do it for so yeah, it's very rare, very rare do I feel anything. And I don't necessarily think that I'm closed off at all. I think quite the opposite. I do a lot of divination, a lot of, you know, things that are mediumship adjacent, but I'm not a medium. So, you know, it's sort of playing around with consciousness and things like that. But only once or twice did I have a really weird feeling. Once I was walking through a local cemetery, and it was an old one that was disused. All the graves had been lifted in, I think it was the 40s, and then placed around the edge to create a little common park. And it was dusk, and I looked across the cemetery and I saw this white amorphous shape moving against one of the old graves, and I thought, oh my God, what the hell is that? And then I looked again, and it was two people in white tracksuits having sex. So that was not paranormal.
Oh wow! I didn't know that's where we were going with this one, but yeah.
That made me think, oh Jesus Christ, get out of the way.
That's just completely thrown me off. Sorry, Kate, for that. I wasn't expecting to go down that road. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Back in the room. Let's compose ourselves.
Yeah,
that's it.
so...
Nikki's gone for the rest of it. That's it. Nikki's gone now for the rest of it. As you were, Kate. I do apologise for that.
Granddad's like it's mentally scarring as the window.
Oh my, yeah. That's a totally different conversation. That was shocking. But yeah, as you were, Kate. Sorry.
But yeah, I have been in. There was one cemetery. I won't say where it is because I don't want to give it a bad rep. But it was a really beautiful old Victorian cemetery that was being allowed to like grow over with wildflowers and so forth. And I'd been there before, and it was near to a place where I went to a conference. And I remember at the time, years earlier, when I had a really crap phone with me, trying to take pictures of these angels. And there was one in particular that looked really odd, and it was like a little boy. And I thought, well, I know exactly where it is because it's quite small and it was on against the back fence. And I went to try and find it. And as soon as I started walking round that part, and I was very much on a mission, I was like, right, I'm going to get this. I'm going to go and get a takeaway. I just started getting this massive, like something awful was going to happen. And I got really cold, and I had pins and needles all over my body. And I just felt like something's wrong with the angels. And it was a really weird thing. But I'd also had these really weird nightmares leading up to it about walking past these three very large angels in a cemetery, that something was wrong if you went past, something terrible was going to happen, like something beyond physical terrible. It was something, yeah, like really spiritually horrific.
Yeah.
And I was around trying to find it, and it was like this angel that I'd seen before never existed. It was really odd, and nothing had changed. It had been that way since the, like 1890 or something. But then I looked across and I saw one of the angels that had been, it was almost identical to the one in my dream. And I just thought, if you go past that angel, you're really in. Something's going to come with you. Something's terrible. So I legged it. I abandoned. But that was the only time where I thought, oh no, this isn't great. There's something here that shouldn't be here. But, yeah, the white tracksuit stories are far more fitting to the sort of thing I see in cemeteries rather than all manner of crap. If you ask anyone who's ever worked in a cemetery, have they seen people putting it off against a gravestone, everyone will put their hand up. They've seen naked people, they've seen naked photo shoots, they've seen people having it off there. And God help you if that same cemetery has a wedding venue, because
can you imagine that? You just imagine a man, there's people like doing the deed in the That's crazy.
People doing the deed on Nana. Can you imagine it? Bloody awful.
My God. Hey Vic, hope you're doing well, pal. And wow, yeah, that did throw me off, and it was like we had a bit of an incident at the festival. You know, the Thursday night, you know, as we were getting all settled in, me, Nikki, Sarah, and Paul, Nikki's partner, we decided to go for a little walk. Do you know they got the little forest bit? Anyway, we were walking back down to the path where the party was in the evening.
Yeah.
And anyway, Nikki claims, and I'll say that in quotation, claims that she saw a cat, like some kind of cat run past. So we saw something. Anyway, we're investigating, and I'm holding on to the fence, and I look up, and I kid you not, a full naked 70-year-old woman is just standing in the window like this. First you see the back, and then she did a full turn, and you see the front. Everyone had run away, and for some reason, I was still at the gate on my own, and I didn't know what to do with myself. I just completely...
He was tragic.
I completely shut off.
Imagine.
It was...
behind the fence.
It was a funny evening. But no, that's great.
I think Nando was mentally scarred for quite a while after that.
Oh yeah, I just didn't know what to do with myself. It was just like, do you know when you're building up that courage to say who's the first one that's going to walk past again to get back into the building? It was funny. But yeah, you know, going through the graveyards and things like that, and then going into the paranormal like investigation. You know, you do research, you've investigated as well. What methods do you like to use then when it comes to a paranormal investigation? Are you happy to use the equipment that we use like modern day, or do you try and implement all the old-fashioned like methods in your investigation?
Yeah.
Hey Tony.
Yeah, I think people expect me to be very anti-tech and just want to do spirit boards and dowsing, divination methods, which I do all like. I do like all of those things, but to be honest, nowadays I'm really open to pretty much anything, and I do like my tech. I really do. And a lot of tech that maybe a couple of years ago I was quite dismissive of, things like SLS cameras. I'm seeing how they're being, you know, they can try and track, you know, a carrier bag can suddenly become a child if you're just waving it around randomly. But like down the line and looking at what places, like really respected institutions and university institutions are doing with SLS cameras, trying to map what could be spirits or what could be things relating to anomalous experiences, what they're doing with them is really fascinating. So I've done a complete turnaround on SLS cameras, and I think if they're fixed point, they're not a kind of yes, no, is there a ghost? But I think there's certainly, they have their place, and I don't think we should so quickly them. I'm never going to be a fan of apps. I don't think I've tried them. I've shelled out cash on the newest ones that are meant to be amazing. These big ITC apps that have several purposes and take about 4 weeks to understand what the hell they're doing. By that point, you can't get them refunded on Apple, so you're going to have to keep trying. That really pissed me off. But Kate's refund list. But pretty much everything else, like I'm pretty open. Like I really like EMF readers of all kinds. You know, I like my REM pods. I really like MF ones. I think anything that combines several features into one, so I don't have to lug it around everywhere, is absolutely bloody marvelous. Motion sensors, footstep trackers. Yeah, I think geophones, anything that measures vibrations, can be one of the most important tech bits in your kit, because they're so versatile. Like you don't have to just measure like vibrations on the floor, footsteps and so forth. You can put them on a table and you can try and have intelligent communication with that. And I've had some amazing investigations where we've had really good like call and response through a geophone just on a table, and everyone's away from it, no one's touching it, and all the usual shtick to make sure that, you know, someone's not just getting bored and booting a table leg. But I think things like any type of kit, it's worth a bash, because what's the worst that can happen? Well, the worst that can happen is if you buy a massive fancy Ovilus or something, the worst that can happen is that you're out 500 quid. But everything else, I think people don't really appreciate how it can be such a personal experience Like, as much as your evidence can be deeply personal, like the naked lady in the window, that's a deeply personal experience for you, Nando. But it might not be a deeply personal experience for you, Nikki. You see?
It's something that's never going to leave me until I'd say.
You see, it's the same with paranormal experiences. It's the same with kit. Naked 70-year-old lady might work for someone. A REM pod might work for someone. A word bank might be someone else's go-to. Someone else might not like it. But I think there's a real dangerous there's a real danger of going into the paranormal, especially when you've been in it years, of getting really, really grumpy and really despondent and sort of being a little bit dictatorial in your ways. I think we've all sort of had those mindsets of, oh, why are you using that, idiots? And then you just have to catch yourself and go, oh, no. Everything has a place. Everything has a role. What works for someone might not work for someone else. But I don't think there's anything to be gained from certainly going online and saying, this is rubbish, this is a crap investigation style, this is the right way to do it. Because I think the right way is the personal way. Because ultimately, most people aren't going out investigating with the great intent to gather so much evidence that they can empirically measure it and they can write a heavily referenced, peer-reviewed academic paper. It's like you go out for personal experience and personal gain. You go out to enjoy yourselves. So stop trying to remove the fun for yourself. Kit-wise, kit-wise, I think one of my favourite things is when you go to an investigation, especially if it's an overnight, like when you're staying somewhere for multiple days, and you get everyone wandering in with those big metal cases, so everyone looks like they're like a dignitary. And I've been so amazing places where it's just been like people, the other guests in a hotel, just watching the stream of people with these big, really suspicious metal flight cases going in, thinking, what are these spies? What the hell is going on? But it's twos.
Are they transporting bodies? Or?
It's like it's just like I don't know, some kind of war convention. What's going on? But I like it. I like my K2s. I like EMF and any type of geophone. It's kind of my favourite. I really like those.
That's cool. Nick's asked a question. He was asking about your favourite equipment, which is cool. You've answered, but is there a specific location that you've investigated that you would say is your favourite?
I don't know. I think I kind of keep returning to certain places because, like, I really enjoyed doing Chillingham Castle, but that's not somewhere you can go back to frequently, mainly because it costs an arm and a leg to go there.
Yeah,
but I really enjoyed Chillingham. It's gorgeous, isn't it? Even if nothing happens, you're still somewhere beautiful. So I think that's when investigations are kind of at their best. If you're investigating like an abandoned swimming pool, it's like it's not so great if you don't get the undead coming through and having a natter. But I suppose places that are visually attractive are always quite nice. Like the Jamaica Inn, obviously, really beautiful place, active. There's a place called Warmley Clock Tower in Warmley, on the outskirts of Bristol. And it looks quite unassuming from the outside, but I've had some really fantastic communications there, and a lot of like call and response, some really good stuff. So I like those places. I go a lot. I'm not in the southwest. I was for many years, but not anymore. But I still go back there because I find like they've got a lot of as far as it goes for like haunted buildings and so forth. I go back that way a lot. Bristol, Somerset, that area.
Nice.
And am I right to think you're based in Grimsby area now? Is that right?
No, I'm from Grimsby originally.
Have you ever looked at the history of Grimsby and and what's the history going back for Grimsby then?
Fish and murder. That's basically it. It's like I love Grimsby. It's a huge part of my identity. And I think every hometown has got something quite amazing. Certainly Lincolnshire in particular has had its fair share of really notorious poltergeists, and Grimsby and Claythorpes, they're separate towns but they merge into one another. They've had some really famous hauntings, especially in like the 80s. There were big poltergeist reports. Colin Wilson wrote quite extensively about one of them. So there's a lot. Grimsby has had a lot, and there were really weird, like animal mutilations and sacrifices and things happening in the 90s, not far from where I lived, but I promise I was busy at the time. I was not involved. So don't pin that on me. But there's a really weird history in Grimsby, but I think people find that really weird history everywhere. But yeah, Grimsby is, well, it was predominantly a fishing port, but it's less and less so nowadays. But yeah, a lot of crime, a lot of fish, a lot of ghosts. So visit Grimsby today. Tourist board should pay me, really, shouldn't they? But,
Exactly.
Yeah.
So have you got somewhere that you'd love to get in and investigate? Have you got, place somewhere that, like somewhere that, say, Enfield haunting, that house there, or, somewhere where you can't get into, but you'd love to get into. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, Enfield, for one, I was thinking, oh, actually, that would be lovely. I say lovely, it's like, again, I love visiting very beautiful places. Enfield is like a post-war semi. It's not very spooky, but I'd love to just from a tourist perspective, I'd love to have a nosy. But I suppose every time I go past a really old building, and I know that it's not going to happen, things like Shakespeare's birthplace, like walking around Stratford upon Avon and just going, I want to go in there, I want to go in there, I want to go in there. Like, there's the most stuff. So I think places like Hampton Court Palace, they do ghost walks, but they're like tale-telling ghost walks. And they say that
just be let loose and just
to just like befriend a guide and say, I'll come on your tour, and then just sneak off to a back room or something like that.
Find all the hidden rooms.
Yes. Yeah, I'd be trusted not to nick anything, I promise. But yeah, Rainham Hall in Norfolk, that's where that really famous photograph of the ghost on the stairs was taken.
Yeah.
And that's a private house. They do tours about once or twice a year, and they do a lot of classical concerts there, but they don't let investigators in. So I'd love.
Yeah, that would be definitely.
Yeah, it's high
Go
on
on.
the list.
Karen's just said, I do apologise if I said your name wrong. Kate loves a charity shop. She got me hooked on them.
Yes, yeah. I'm a hoarder, really. Like I'm certainly a very big book hoarder. I'm always found in a charity shop, an antique shop, because most of my clothes are either like All Saints today or 1980s Nana. There's no middle ground. So most of my clothes come from there. And looking around like charity shop books, it's just, you can find the weirdest, most amazing books that really into crop circles. And in like the most unassuming charity shop, you'll come out with a stack and thinking, thanks, Bernard. The other day, I was in a charity shop, as I clearly always am, and there was a stack of books on near-death experiences for £1 each. So it was like, this is a no-brainer. So I grabbed them, went home, took them home, started to flick through them, and there were like holiday snaps, in like multiple holiday snaps from like the 90s in every single every single book, and it looked like it was a single man's trip to Thailand.
Wow.
Where he had very specific interests. So yeah, I had my own near-death experiences. I flicked through and they gradually got worse. It's like, yeah. So charity shops are wonderful. They're wonderful, yeah.
And you're
go on, Nikki.
You have a little secret obsession with Uri Geller as well, don't you?
Oh, that's not secret. I have professed that on stage in front of thousands of people before. I am absolutely fascinated by Uri Geller. I think I don't want him. I think when I say I'm like obsessed with Uri Geller, people think that I'm like, he's amazing, he's legitimate, everything he's ever done is wonderful. But I think he's the most bizarre living man, and I'm desperate to meet him, because I think any man who has released 5 board games about bending spoons is an absolute icon. And I just think he's amazing. He's amazing. Yeah. He shouldn't still be this like icon, and but he is. I think he's fascinating, and he's so weird. So weird.
He's the biggest oddball.
Yeah.
But
I mean, he goes, it's like knitwear model to medium pipeline. Yeah, so weird.
And
he was his earliest gigs was
you collect, like you say, the charity shops and the books. So you collect a lot of kind of like the strange, but not strange books, but you like to find those books that, like you say, the near-death experiences and the
I don't always. Yeah. I love like in the 70s there was this spate of what I call polyester, nice, like, fluffy old ladies in caftans, being incredibly popular and appearing in newspapers, having their own columns and stuff. And so there's this big spate of really little paperback biographies of these mediums. It just seemed like you just had to say, I can talk to ghosts, by the way. Been speaking to Jack the Ripper for the last half hour from the netherworld, and you got a book deal. And so I'm kind of obsessed with collecting these really, really obscure mediums biographies. And some of them that I've read and just thought, I know you think these are psychic experiences, but you're just coming across as a horrible human being. They're fascinating. They're like this bit of really recent history that we've completely forgotten about. And that's how I can justify having thousands and thousands of books, because it's just like, oh, I need it. It's not drugs and booze. It's books. What could possibly go wrong? And then, like, I might need structural work on a house done because I've got too many paperbacks. But I can find a reason. I can justify anything in my own head. Yeah.
Oh, 100%.
And on the subject on books, you've got a new book coming out in the new year, I believe. Can you tell us a little bit about your book and what we can expect from your book?
Yeah. It's honestly the urge to just say it's about ghost sex after what I've been saying is really strong, but it's not. It's called that's the sequel. It's called
ghost sex in between.
I know. Christ. People are going to be so disappointed now if they buy it and they go, well, I'm sorry. But is there? So let's talk about my book and the vast amount of ectoplasm within it. It's called Begotten, and it's a neo-Gothic ghost story. So it's set in the 19th century, and it's the story of one family who suddenly have spiritualism and potentially fraudulent mediums come into their house, and what that means, the dynamics within the family. So I've written it within like several different ghost story traditions, but I really like the tradition of the supernatural being questioned. Like, is it real? Is it in our minds? And how far can you push that? And so when I was reading Victorian accounts of seances that, like I say, are so extreme, to then think, well, what if they were real? What if this was all legitimate? What if people were doing this in seances? And what if it really was spirits, and how dangerous that is? And I put it in a book. It's a part horror, but it's definitely more of like a neo-Victorian Gothic thriller that I think people that are interested in just good, solid, thriller stories will like, but certainly people that are into the paranormal and know their way around a séance and the extreme ways of the Victorian era, they really like it. And it's out in May next year, but pre-orders are up now, and I know pre-orders aren't that fun, but if you think of it as giving a present to your future self, it's a nicer way of looking at it. But pre-orders really help authors, because they really help publishers, and they help us get ideas of where to go in the future. And it's called Begotten, and it's out May the 3rd, Friday, gutted, but at least I got the 13th. But yeah, so it's out next year, and yeah, I really think a lot of paranormal people will like it, and there might be ectoplasm in it. Everyone likes ectoplasm, surely.
And where do people go to buy your book? Is it like on Amazon now? Or?
Yeah, you can pre-order it through Amazon, Waterstones. Yeah, so go on there.
People
get Yes, please do. And
and just to ask, where do you get your inspiration to write your books? Is there an author that you've connected with from your years of research, you know, that you've sort of learned it all from?
Mills and Boone mainly. No, it's I really like. There's an author called Sarah Waters. So, and she wrote a book called Affinity in the mid-90s, and that was about a relationship between an upper class woman who was visiting a medium in prison. And I found that the way that she wrote about the 19th century and the way she wrote relationships between women of different class divides as well was, you know, when you read a book so good, you're like, oh, I want to chew it. Like, it's that good. She's one of those writers. So her and Poppy Bright, who, well, Poppy Bright is now Billy Martin, but still uses the pen name Poppy Z Bright because they're American. I still am absolute devotee of their works, because they, if anyone's read Lost Souls, which was published in the early 90s, it's like a gay vampire party gore novel, but it's beautifully written. It's so beautifully written. It's like weaving this beautiful tapestry, but with blood and drugs and chocolate through it. It's just stunning. And I've read everything that Bright's ever written, and it goes from like really extreme gore through to really nice, nuanced relationships between cooks in New Orleans. So that is something that I really like. I like good stories and good writing, like good descriptions, good prose. So that's kind of what I really go for. I want to produce a chewable book.
Oh, that's brilliant. That sounds great. And then also, not just your book you've got coming up next year, but a new series of, is it called Paranormal Homecoming? Did I get that right?
Haunted Homecoming.
Haunted Homecoming. I knew I was going to get it right. You originally did the series with Jack Osbourne, but now you're returning with Jonathan Ross and Ian Norman. Well, sounds absolutely great. Can you give us a little bit of what we can expect to see from the new series coming out? Yeah.
Well, obviously, it's a completely different angle this time, because Jack Osbourne is so synonymous with the paranormal. He's an investigator. He's got his own beliefs. So going into the first series was like, oh, we're already both on the same team, if you know what I mean. So we're both going in. Yeah. Let's just see how we investigate these spaces and see if these places that are so linked with you have anything paranormal really going on. And it was an amazing shoot. It was really lovely. Jack was the nicest guy. His family were lovely. The team were great. And I think that makes a really big difference. And this time round, which is Jonathan Ross's, before I forget to say, it's a 2-part special that's on the 20th of December, and it's released on Discovery Plus the same time, so you can play catch up on that. But Jonathan Ross is a skeptic. He's I think a lot of people got quite confused about that casting, thinking, well, he's not a ghost hunter. It's like,
it was a bit weird when it first come out and you saw like the poster being made and you think Jonathan Ross paranormal.
Yeah, you don't think of it.
It just doesn't marry up, does it? Yeah. You don't see it, but yeah.
He's skeptical, but he's always held an interest in it because he's such a big horror buff. Like we were speaking for we're speaking for ages about really old horror and Hammer horrors between takes and things. It was so he knows all of that, and he really wants to have those experiences, and just wants to know if there's anything in it, because his wife Jane Goldman did a series called Jane Goldman Investigates I think it was in the 2000s, which was fabulous. Like, I love her. So experiences, but he's never really been in a position to try and experience them himself. So he was kind of coming in on ground zero, and he knew basics and he knew what other people had said, but he didn't know what the kit was, what our approaches were, and things like that. So it was really nice to just sort of hold someone's hand and say, all right, this is what some people say, this is what I like to do. We might get something, we might not. We're not faking, and just talk him through it. And so, we went around places that were relevant to him and his upbringing. And between Ian and myself, sort of like in a pincer movement, we introduced him to the world of the paranormal, between kits, mediumship, and all manner of things. And it was great. It was genuinely lovely, and he's so nice. Like, he's one of the loveliest guys. Would give you the shirt off his back. He's genuinely lovely, and it was a really, really fun shoot. And I think people will enjoy it, and they might recognise some places. I can't say what they are, but because the nature of these things, it's not even worth me trying to risk it. But there's places and a couple of people that other people might recognise from within the paranormal community. So it's fantastic, and it's out.
So do you think you've managed to convert him? And
you'll have to wait and see. But
that's something.
20th of December. So I feel like I'm officially Christmas programming now. So it's like it's me, Wallace and Gromit, and the Snowman, and that's your Christmas viewing sorted.
Brilliant. But going forward, before we talk about you're doing some guest speaking throughout 2025, is there something that you've got in mind that you would love to do for yourself in the paranormal, or is there something that you've got in mind that you would love to do that hasn't come forward yet?
To be honest, the only things that I really want to get some big projects finished next year. I've got a lot of cogs turning, certainly with massive writing projects, and I really want to get those done. But I don't know. I kind of just like laying in a little raft and work, and then just seeing what happens, seeing where things take me. But I do love paranormal TV, and I'm starting to feed off this real duality in the community, where it's like only legitimate investigations are done on YouTube and TikTok. TV's rubbish, and I'm just there in the middle going, hey, everyone's friendly, let's all hold hands. I'm such this little hippy dippy idiot in the middle going, let's listen to both sides. So I quite like being in that position and being like, YouTubers, fantastic, podcasters, fantastic, and TikTok is brilliant, TV brilliant. It's like this whole idea of, I love the idea of para-unity, which is a very popular little term at the minute, but I don't think that it's actually ever actioned, because there's always
the concept of it is great mentality. The concept of it is great, but unfortunately the delivery of it is something very different. But saying that for yourself, you're stepping into saying about the world of YouTube, the world of TV. Does that make you quite nervous when you get that phone call from a TV network that want you to put yourself out there, where there's such a divide? You're talking about para-unity, you're talking about the divide there. How do you judge whether you're going to go forward with something like that? Because you're putting yourself out there for everyone to see Kate doing what she does, and for everyone to have an opinion. And they have opinions. You protected by I don't know if you don't want to talk about it, that's fine. But
no,
do you get some elements of protection from the networks that you're working with? How do they look after you, and what do you do to look after yourself in that sort of? Because it can be quite volatile. I do have an opinion that people do it because they got nothing better to do and they just want to be nasty. That's my opinion. It's easy. If you don't like what you're seeing on TV, you got a controller, switch the channel. But unfortunately, the world that we live in is people have got to make personal references and take it very, they take it to a different level. So How do you protect yourself from that?
I do see it as saying, like, what if someone comes up to you, stares at your wife and goes, the state of that, and then walks off? It's like, you wouldn't do that. That's like, that's a thing to do. But it seems that whatever field you're in, online, it's a free for all, and you can be as deeply personal as you want about a stranger, as if they've just climbed in through your bedroom window and said, let me show you my presentation. It's like you say, there's a controller. But I suppose what you do on TV, like I've been approached about projects that I've said, this isn't for me. I've been approached about projects and pilots that haven't come off, and I've done shows, and I've got shows next year as well that again, I can't say anything about, but I'm still going to be on your box, even if you can't stand my face. I'm still going to be there. So yeah, I think whenever you accept something, you've always got to have it in the back of your head that, all right, now you are, whether you like it or not, someone is going to have a very strong opinion on your hair, your jumper, the way you hold a device, the words you say. You suddenly become a public commodity. So I think it's a matter of going into it thinking, how am I going to deal with any? It's easy to deal with positivity. Everyone loves being told that they're marvelous, but yeah, when it comes to negativity, this goes the same for people that put them to have big YouTube and social media followings. I think you've got to suddenly conjure up a really good social media strategy and say, if I engage with the good, I've got to engage with the bad. And sometimes you've got to think about what's best for you and what's best for your head health. Because I feel like if you delete comments or if you delete negative attention or don't address it, it's seen as a weakness, whereas actually it's far more a representation of strength. I certainly feel with like a lot of the immediacy of social media can be quite damaging. But a lot of production companies will have their own duty of care, and they have their own duty of care documents, and some are now developing their own almost guidelines as to how to handle negative attention online. It's that extreme that people are that people are now being told, here's how you deal with this.
That speaks volumes.
So
doesn't it?
yeah, because it's anyone that ever puts, well, I'm sure you've had it yourselves with anything you put online, people are going to have well informed, but my God, there'll be opinions. So it's
do you know, and that I agree with you. If someone has an opinion, like we've put out what we believe could be something, and we always say could, because there's always another side to it. We get it. You know, we've done investigations where we thought something's happened, we've recorded it, we've looked back on it and think this is real. But then when we look at it the next day, when your mind's away from where you've been, you sort of feel like, well, actually, could that have been something very logical? But, you know, I get what you're saying about deleting comments makes it look like it's a weakness. But when they go from constructive feedback, maybe, or, you know, saying they don't believe, I get that. I'm happy with those sort. It's the personal comments that you're saying about your hair. What's your hair got to do with what you're doing? That's where I don't get why people go down the personal attack. And that's what I'm saying. Does that make it difficult for
not
you
going
to
like you? A
Does
lot
that
of
have
people will
opinion?
judge content. Yeah, a lot of people will judge content on a thumbnail.
Yeah.
Or they'll judge content on something, a 5-minute thing they watched 20 years ago, or something unrelated. It just seems to be the nature. It does seem, it seems really counterproductive when everyone's so hot on mental health now, and hot on be kind, take time for yourself, be like hashtag be kind, and then you go online and you go, oh, this is a cesspit. But I think it's whenever you put anything online in any form of like creative output, best thing to do is just put your mental health and put your safety at the forefront of everything. You know, the opinions of others don't need any importance placed upon them ultimately, because you're the only person you've got to answer to.
I like what the Boo Brothers have just put as well. I think it might be Lee or Sarah, but I think it might be Lee, this one. They put, did you know your hair needs to look great to get interaction from a spirit? You know, it's just
Yeah, you see,
it's just crazy
good
how
point.
people can, you know, act like that.
Yeah, I mean, I need my roots doing at the minute, but if I'd had them freshly done, honestly, there'd be poltergeists running all behind me right now.
Oh,
But I'm exactly it.
I won't dare take my hat off because I need a haircut. So I thought it might be Lee. Hey Lee, I hope you're doing well, pal. I hope Sarah's well. You know, it's been great, you know, finding out about yourself and listening to your journey and everything that you've got coming up. Before we do finish off, what I'd like you to do is just give a bit of a shout, because you've got some guest appearances going on next year as well for Act 2025. Do you want to just give a bit of a shout out where you're going to be if people want to come and meet you in person and listen to your talks?
Yeah, at the minute, I am appearing at Paracon in Northwich, or if that's how you pronounce it. I haven't been there before. And I'm doing the Parameets in their various locations. I think there's 2, but I'm doing the Parameets as well. So that's all I've got in the diary so far. I'm going to try and keep it quite clear. But yeah, if you want to,
if you guys can book to go to these Parameets, go to Kate's talks. She's brilliant. Guarantee it. You'll love every second.
Thank you. Yeah, and if you want to come and insult my hair to my face, then you can do so in Northwich under the Parameet. So, you know, those willing to travel.
And I must say, you know, we've, you know, me, Nikki, Sarah, Paul, we've been to like a couple of these conventions, and they are great. You get to meet a lot of like-minded people, really good fun people, like the Boo Brothers we got to meet at the festival. You know, great. Sarah's Irish dancing was greatly. I don't know if she's there with you, but it's just the kinds of people you get to meet. You just feel so relaxed, and it's a great weekend. So I definitely highly recommend, if you haven't done it yet and you're interested in the paranormal, definitely check out the Parameet, the Paracon. You know, go and see, you know, people like Kate. You know, she gives a real good, you know, detailed talk about what she's looked into, all sorts of stuff, and the different types of people you get to meet as well. You know, so it's definitely great. And I know, like the Parameet, I think they've got a dinner, a disco afterwards, I think, during the weekend.
Oh, it's everything. Yeah.
So, you know, definitely go, and you can go and check that out on Neil Packer's page. He runs it. I think you can go through the Haunted Antiques Paranormal Research Centre. I know there's loads of posts up there, and what I will do is put all the links on the chat afterwards, and also to Kate's Facebook page, Burials and Beyond. If you want to check out what's going on in Kate's world, definitely go and check out her page. She's always got something going on, updating stuff, and it's definitely worth, you know, if you want to know about the history side of things as well. Kate does a great job at telling the stories of the history of the paranormal as well. But I just want to say thank you so much, Kate, for joining us tonight. It's been lovely catching up with you and, you know, delving a bit deeper about what you've been doing and everything like that. I've really enjoyed our chat this evening.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been lovely, and sorry for turning the air blue a little bit.
But no, it's been absolutely great. You know, getting to chat with you a bit more and find out more. And maybe after you've done the Haunted Homecomings, we can do a catch up about, you know, talk about the series and, you know, in a bit more detail, because I know you can't give a lot away at the moment.
I know, it's really frustrating because you want to be like, and this cool thing happened, and this, but it's like,
I can't.
Please watch. Please watch online and say nice things about it. Yeah.
Like Kate said earlier on, that hits the TV screens on the 20th of December. It'll be on Discovery Plus, so you can stream that on Discovery Plus. And it's on
Really channel.
Really, did you say?
Yeah.
Really.
There we go. So Really, but if you miss it, on Discovery Plus, watch it, and then we'll do a follow up with Kate in the new year, and we can discuss that as well.
Beforehand, watch Haunted Homecomings with Jack Osbourne, because it was bloody brilliant.
Yes.
Oh, thank you.
That was good. That was good. The Haunted Homecomings. That's still on Discovery, isn't it? As well. That's on Discovery.
Yeah, there's that, and Unexplained, Caught on Camera is on there as well.
Yes.
The last series. That's
Absolutely.
me looking at clips and going, could be a cryptid, might be a carrier bag. So if people like that, then
No.
then go forth.
But no, it's been absolutely great, Kate. Thank you so much for spending the evening with us, and we've had a laugh. I think it's been great.
Yeah, it's been great.
Thank you again for taking part. But I'll let you get on with your evening, because I know you've been away and it's the first time you've got to sit at home. But we'd definitely love to catch up with you in the new year after we've seen Haunted Homecomings, and then we can do a follow-up with you if that's okay.
Yeah, that'd be fabulous.
Brilliant. Well, thank you again, and I'll let you get on with your evening, Kate.
Okay,
Take care.
Have a lovely Christmas.
Wow, that was fun. Totally threw me off about the cemetery bit. I've still got that in my head at the moment. That shows my maturity level, doesn't it? How mature I really am. It totally threw me off. I was
half
ready for a story.
It was just purely your face with it, with the realization of that's where it was going. It was hysterical.
God, that hit me. You know what I'm like. As soon as something hits me, I'm like, okay, where am I going next? But no, honestly and truly, what a great chat with Kate. Great.
You literally talk to Kate for hours.
Yeah, it is. She's great. The way she tells her stories, the way she talks and shares her knowledge and everything, has been absolutely awesome.
Her knowledge and it's just astounding. But
no, we'll definitely do a catch up with Kate in the new year. But like I said, if you can go and support Kate's page, Burials and Beyond, on Facebook. She's got
go onto the
website as well.
So many stories and investigations and of graveyards and tombstones, and there's just hangman's locket and all this web of information that she's just it's amazing. Go and look at her website to read some of her stories.
Yeah, so I'll definitely link Kate's social media on the chat afterwards. For us, just to give you guys a bit of a heads up about Portal. So we're going into our last investigation of 2024. The team will be heading to Essex Way, I believe, and we're going to be investigating the Calverton Hatch. And we're really lucky with this one because we have actually got a guest investigator that night. We got Penny Griffiths-Morgan joining us. So that is going to be a great one. If anyone does want to join, we do have some spaces left. So, head to our Facebook page or website and get yourself booked on. And then join me and Nikki on the 15th of December. We have Jeff Bellinger joining us. And we're going to be talking about Christmas ghosts and monsters. This guy, again, he is a wealth of knowledge in the paranormal, especially paranormal stories relating to, like we're saying, the Christmas spirits, ghosts, monsters. So if you want another chat, that's going to be exciting and, very different to what we've done in the past because we're talking about stories. Definitely join us then. But no, I just want to say thank you for everyone that's joined us in the chat today. Thank you to my lovely host as well, Nikki, for joining. I think this might be a regular thing. Shall we do this more regularly, I think?
If you can put up with me. If they can put up with this face, then, No,
100%. I think it's nice having another member of the team join in and, you never know. Maybe next time you'll be doing it solo on your own. Maybe not. Okay, let's go.
Don't push it.
Yeah, I can hear Paul in the background now. But no, so definitely come and join us for on the 15th. It'll be a great chat with Jeff. If you want to know about Christmas ghosts and monsters and things like that, and we'll have another chat. And then we do have a number of other guests lined up going into 2025. So, keep watching our page for investigations and everything like that. But for now, I'm going to say goodbye to all you lovely people. Have a lovely weekend. Nikki, I will see you next weekend.
Yep, see you next weekend. Looking forward.
And thank you for joining me tonight, Nikki. It's been great.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me.
Goodbye, you lovely people. Enjoy the rest of the evening, and we'll see you soon.
See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.